Sound, music, sustainability. Welcome to Sustain FM. All right, today I'm happy to have Jeannette Petrik on the show. Jeanette's an experimental noisemaker performing as, let me see if I get this pronunciation right, Chebedajha?
I would say Chebedajha.
Chebedajha, okay, thank you. A writer and cultural worker based in the Netherlands. And I've been fascinated by Jeanette's work ever since I saw their live performance in, and this is another pronunciation, I pronounce it Enschede. Is that close?
Yeah.
Well, okay, close enough. And that performance was using heartbeats to clock a live modular synth show, and I'd never seen that before, and it was just really interesting. And the two of us share a love for live performance, working with environments, and building community. So I'm really excited to talk with them. So welcome to the show, Jeanette.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. So I wanted to start by asking you a bit about your background and the path to where you are, because I'm always interested in artists like yourself that are both making music and sound and also working with hardware and technology and so on. So I'm curious, did you get started with the building and making side of things and then move into music? Or were you kind of more interested in sound and music first and then got into the making? Or was it a bit of both? I'm curious how that happened.
I would say for me, the path was quite atypical.
Mhm.
I also, like, it's recent for me to consider myself as a musician
Okay.
because I'm actually a maker, but I studied product design. So making for me used to mean working with wood, working with metal, plastics, making objects. And I still consider myself a maker in that sense.
Mhm.
Although I don't do this like as like my job is, I don't consider this my job anymore.
Right.
But so then the interest in music really came through organizing concerts. So we used to have a concert venue, like a self-organized concert venue here in Enschede called the Loch, where I don't know, a couple of times a month we would host DIY shows. And then my interest in noise particularly came through encountering other practitioners. So musicians that we had invited then, I don't know, performed their sound. And so I think I found like this interest. I think it was like both, like from both directions in a way. But the approach to making was really more like being able to fix your bike is like a skill. And then actually I used to be really obsessed with bikes. So the ability to fix my bike suddenly like gave me the confidence to encounter other like mechanical structures also. So I think this basic understanding of how things work also was like my my entry point to this kind of music.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting path. And I'm curious about how that connects to, because one of the things that I really love about your work is the way that you work sort of, from my perception anyway, what seems to be intersections of environments. So things that are outside of ourselves, bodies, the person that's up on stage or in an environment, and the technology. And whether that's through the heartbeat performances I mentioned, or the composition you performed at the quantum-inspired sound event at Berlin Science Week a couple of years ago. Does that resonate with you? Do you also see that as a thread that kind of runs through your work?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think it really took me a while to even be able to have this conversation and to rationalize things this way, because I used to think that my interests were too diverse or like too spread out to be able to describe myself in a certain way, or like to be able to point to a threat in some way. But yeah, I used to be really interested in meditation and in body work also. I used to do acrobatics, so I think this interest in body and presence is there definitely. But also, I think again the study of design in for me, it didn't mean industrial design. So learning how objects are made, but also questioning why things are made and in which context and for whom, and like, do we even need things as a society?
Right.
And so this idea of also challenging, like for me, the mental state of the performing, like I even can't practice so much as a musician. Like for me, the performances are really the central thing. And there, all the context of the performance, the collectivity aspect, me as an individual being seen by other people, like as a racialized person with an identity that is not always exactly clear, or as a queer person, like so many aspects come together in the performance aspect. So yeah, I think really, it worked. Like I reckon interest in the intersections between like body and performance and technology.
Quantum jump is a term used to describe a sudden change in the state of a quantum bit. Qubits exist in multiple states on a ladder formed by whole numbers, but they actually can also be in between the whole numbers. A quantum jump happens when we measure the qubit jump between these values on the ladder. Qubits interact with resonators. These resonators are driven so that they oscillate. A qubit state influences this oscillation, like a force pushing on it. And through this influence, it is possible to deduce the qubit state.
smallest objects, the most chaotic movements appear. A particle position and speed cannot be precisely determined at the same time, and this inherent uncertainty creates a noisy, probabilistic character called quantum noise.
So yeah, I'm really interested in what you said about the live performance, because a lot of my interest is around live performance as well, and sort of what that brings up, and those environments can be really exciting, and they can also be very stressful and anxiety producing. So I'm curious about that, because one of the recordings that you shared was trying to, and I'm quoting here from the description, artistically articulate their approach to contemporary sounds of fear. Does that connect to your thoughts around being on stage and being seen, and sort of the feeling of excitement and anxiety kind of mixed together?
Yeah, it does. I used to be really interested, like during my studies, I used to be like, that's like over 10 years ago, but it still resonates. I used to be really interested in performance and in like situation or like situationist performance in public.
Okay.
So I would, for example, I had this one thing where I would go into like a clothing store and ask the shop assistant for clothing that they had on display, and then I would buy that and get dressed. It was like, you see, it's like a student project. I would, outside of the shop, I would dress in this outfit that they had chosen for me, and then observe how like strangers would react to me and kind of record and document that. So I think this idea of me being present and seen in public always had like a specific, yeah, there was something to that. And now, like by now, I understand that I feel anxious really often in different kinds of situations. And I think with the musical performance aspect, this anxiety is really driving it's driving my performances. So, for example, with this piece that you mentioned, that was a podcast that was hosted by a museum, and in the museum space, I was invited to play, and this was when I realized that this sense of anxiety, although it's not a positive feeling, it helps me to overcome this idea of playing in a way that pleases the audience. So I'm not interested in that at all, actually. When I play, it's almost like I enter into a space in my head that's an emotional space, and if I overcome the sense of anxiety, then I can enter, then I can be like without worry even. And if if my usual attitude is quite anxious, then it's quite, it's really interesting to be able to have an outlet that, allows you to be free of that. So, and it's interesting that, as I mentioned, I have a big sound system at my house. I could play all the time, but I don't because somehow this aspect of people watching me is important. And I still haven't quite, I'm not a really, like, by personality, I'm not a person that needs a lot of attention from the outside, but somehow in that aspect, it's important. I'm not sure.
So that's interesting. So I'm really curious about. So thanks for sharing that. And when you talk about entering that anxiety, I'm kind of curious, does it sort of feel like embracing the anxiety as a way to move through it? Or is it kind of more experiencing that in a collective way with the audience? I'm kind of curious how that kind of feels. I mean, I guess in a simplistic way, does it sort of feel like more anxious or less anxious when you're actually performing?
Oh, I'm more anxious.
Okay.
Somehow, I would say it's on the one hand, so usually my performances, they're between, like I found like a sweet spot between 20 and 25 minutes of length. The first, I even started to be a bit structural with it. I think the first 3-4 minutes, I tend to be so anxious that I anyway wouldn't try to do anything crazy. So after that time, somehow my body is like, let's go of the anxiety. So while in the beginning, maybe it's kind of like an overwhelm mechanism, you know, when you're so anxious, like you can't keep that up.
Right.
So yeah, maybe I'm lucky because like however nervous I am, it vanishes. So, and I think there's there's collectivity is important in that sense. So I've also had performances where the anxiety doesn't leave, but usually I perform in spaces where I find myself surrounded by very friendly and interested and strange people who are themselves, you know, interested in really experimental music. So then I feel like it's like a friendly space.
Right.
And then the anxiety doesn't get too much, doesn't get too much value. Maybe also, because you mentioned the heartbeat performances, I started with that because it gives me the opportunity to tap into that, or like to listen to the anxiety. Because when I practice or when I prepare for a gig, and then, you know, I decide like which modules do I take because I use a modular synthesizer. Usually when I hear my heartbeat then in the system, it's calm because I'm usually quite a calm person. But then it's really impressive how much faster my heartbeat is when I'm in the performance situation.
Right. Yeah,
So that element really, so that element really is, yeah, I actually added this because of the anxiety.
that's really fascinating, sort of how those different pieces come together. And I want to pick up something you mentioned a couple of minutes ago. So you were talking about the collectivity, I think. And you've also mentioned your experience with DIY projects and approaches. And when I had our mutual friend Jackie or Jack Noyes on the show, they talked about moving away from the phrase "do it yourself" to "make it together," to emphasize more the community aspects of building. And does that resonate with you? Because I'm curious if that links to a phrase in your bio where you talk about, and I'm quoting again here, considering language, sound, and design as an opportunity for public empowerment. So I'm curious how you see this making it together and community and DIY and public empowerment connecting.
It resonates like this. The term resonates with me because on my path of learning how to make things and how to do things, definitely this collective aspect was really important. So I mentioned this self-organized concert venue that we were having in Enschede that really relied on. I think the term making it together, like make it together, is important, but somehow I'm still really attached to DIY because this aspect of self-empowerment, I feel is important for the single person also.
Mm-hmm.
So back to the example of bicycles, we can have a workshop of skill sharing and learn how to change an inner tube, for example. But it's still, for me, it's still central that the individual person has the confidence to go ahead and also give a workshop. So like to also teach.
Right.
I think I'm also active in the free techno scene in the Netherlands and Germany. And it's quite a struggle within this more anarchist organizing. Not to have this hierarchy of knowledge that usually, unfortunately, it's a male-dominated knowledge system. It's oftentimes men knowing the technical aspects and others of that group maybe doing the bar. So in a way, you can still do things. So this, for me, DIY, not to dismiss any other approaches, but somehow I feel like the meaning of DIY for me is a strength somehow of the individual also.
That's really interesting. And yeah, I think this sort of maybe spectrum, or maybe diversity is not the right word, but between the individual and the collective, because I'm curious how you see that idea of sort of the individual empowerment, and also you mentioned the male-dominated spaces, and how that connects to your organizing work, for example, with the Fem Noise network, is because it seems to me that that network is again this, or my impression is this blend of both a collective but also individual empowerment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of in that net. So it's not a collective
Okay.
Fem Noise. It's a network.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a network of practitioners that consider themselves flinter. So female, lesbian, inter, non-binary, trans.
Mm-hmm.
So the network is quite diverse. It's also visual artists, musicians, so people who are active doing their things, and then the network itself gives the opportunity for people to exchange, to ask questions, to share about findings, to like we talk about tech, to exchange about unpleasant experiences, maybe in a performance setting. So it's really a network of care,
Mm-hmm.
of care for each other, but it's a network of individuals who are active.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say collectivity is big there, but if we connect it back to DIY, there the individuals already are doing their things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a support network, and at the same time, people, yeah, maybe it's like like a spiral that like elevates itself. Like
Mm-hmm.
your act to be more active. Maybe it's difficult to really separate the two things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's separating the individual from the collective is not an easy thing to do, and maybe not necessary, but also sort of maybe those things come together in that live performance, which is kind of a segue into as we start to wrap up our conversation. As usual with this show, we close with a live performance, and you've shared a couple, and the one that we're going to close with is a performance from earlier this year at Voltage Control in Amsterdam. And can you tell us a little bit about this performance and what we're going to hear?
This performance also uses the heartbeat. You're gonna hear it's quite recognizable. It uses the heartbeat to control sound. Um, and this performance was impressive because it was an event where I think there were 15 performers in total, and each person had, or maybe it was 10, I'm not sure, but like each performer had 15 minutes. So that also, back to the aspect of anxiety, it gives a lot of pressure to know you only have that time frame.
Right.
But it was really, that was really like a community event for me, because all the other performers were dealing with the same. It was a really fair situation. Everybody had the same time. We were all set up at a big table. All the equipment was on a table, and everybody was like gathered around. That was, I would say, that made me feel really at home in a community of electronic musicians. That was really, really great. And I think this is an aspect that influences my performances strongly. Like, how comfortable do I feel? Like, is the social situation set up in a way that is caring and friendly? Or do we just arrive and then do our thing and leave?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your sounds and sharing your experiences. And thanks everyone for listening. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to Jeanette's info and work and some of the events and networks that we mentioned. Follow sustain.fm on Instagram and on the web, on YouTube for future shows. And definitely send a DM if you know of interesting artists we should have on the show. So thanks again, Jeanette, and let's
Yeah,
take a listen
thanks
to
for having
your
me.
voltage control show.
Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. Okay, thanks for listening to Sustain. Hope to catch you again next time. Be sure to sign up for our email list on our website, sustain.fm. Follow our Instagram, also sustain.fm, and get more info on the radio show, in-person events in different cities, live streams, and more. All right, until next time, see you on the dance floor.